My name is Liz White. I'm a director of Animal Alliance of Canada. Animal Alliance has been fighting for animals and the environment for 30 years. We strongly recommend to Premier Ford, Minister Hardeman, this committee, and the government to withdraw Bill 156. The bill's clear intention is to muzzle employee whistleblowers, investigative journalists, and others who may observe animal abuse, and in doing so violates their rights of freedom of expression under Section 2B of the Charter. The bill lacks clarity as to who can and cannot report concerns about the condition in which farmed animals are kept, including veterinarians who may not have the consent of the owner-occupiers to report abuse, undue physical and psychological hardship, privation, and neglect, as is required under the PAWS Act. Bill 156 certainly has a chilling effect. With regard to trespass, the government already has the Trespass to Property Act. As far as I can tell, no trespass charges have been laid against individuals who have entered Ontario farms. As the minister stated in a February 26, 2020 interview with TVO Steve Paikin, he said, "I think we all need to understand the present trespass laws has the same authority." So if that's true, why create a new piece of legislation when one already exists? Why not use the Trespass to Property Act to achieve the same goal? The answer appears to be in Section 4 and Section 5 of Bill 156, and I'm going to confine my comments to Section 4. Section 4, subsection 6, is designed to prevent investigations conducted by journalists or other entities such as the group Last Chance for Animals. In 2018, the group conducted an undercover investigation into a goat dairy farm in Caledon, Ontario. This investigation documented conditions of neglect and cruelty. The video showed goats crawling on their knees from overgrown hooves and goats with lesions and infections. LCA laid a complaint with the OSP, the OPP, and OMAFRA. Now, the minister, the OPP, and the OSPCA were seemingly unaware of the neglect and abuse documented in this investigation. Since the minister does not conduct on-farm inspections, under Bill 156, the unacceptable condition of the animals would have been continued to be unreported because the investigation would have been illegal. In the same TVO interview, the minister states, "If someone believes something is happening inappropriate behind the walls, call PAWS." In this case, it seems that no one on the inside complained. It took an outside organization to document the conditions of the animals and seek intervention on their behalf. Why would any government not want to ensure the proper treatment of animals in circumstances documented by Last Chance for Animals? And why would any government want to hide or cover up the conditions from Ontario residents and taxpayers? Under normal circumstances, the government provides us with very little information about the conditions under which farmed animals are forced to live. Occasionally, we get a glimpse into the industry, as happened during a 2-year trial between the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and Maple Lodge Farms, where broiler chickens and spent hens died in large numbers during transport to slaughter because of inclement weather. Now Ontarians are dealing with COVID-19, and the virus has exposed vulnerabilities in our society, including in nursing homes, shelters for homeless folks, workers in slaughterhouses, and migrant workers. What is not being discussed is the fate of animals on farms, stockyards, and in auction barns during the COVID crisis. How have animals been impacted by the closure of such facilities? I've not been able to find any ministry reports as to what's happening to animals whose slaughter dates have been suspended due to plant closings. Are there situations in Ontario where farmed animals are being killed in large numbers due to the effect of COVID? And if so, how are they being killed? We just don't know. US media reports give us a bit of glimpse. They report piglets being aborted, chickens being gassed. They talk about animals who are being culled by suffocation, drowning, and shooting. And the National Pork Board also permits ventilation shutdown. The fact that Ontario currently do not know what is happening to farms is deeply troubling. The intent of Bill 156 is to further suppress information about how farmed animals are forced to live. So please withdraw Bill 156. You will not succeed in keeping the conditions of farmed animals secret. Animals have the right to live their lives free of pain and suffering. They deserve to be considered sentient beings, not production units. Ontario taxpayers have the right to know what happens to animals on farms. COVID-19 has presented us with a very real opportunity to work together to change our approach to farm animals. We have a very real opportunity to move away from industrialized animal agriculture, which we know contributes heavily to the climate crisis we face, and we know farmed animals face great deprivation, cruelty, and suffering. So let's take this opportunity to redefine the evolution of animal agriculture. Thank you.
Please raise your hand. MPP Cramp, you may begin.
Well, thank you, and welcome to all of our guests. This gives us a great opportunity to hear a broad divergence of opinion. I can certainly assure you that's just the nature of not only politics, but I guess human nature as well. Obviously, I come from a significantly engaged agricultural community, so I certainly have some strong feelings on the matter. But I've heard a lot of witnesses here so far, and I agree with some of my colleagues in that from all sides here, in which we're definitely trying to strike, as has been said, a balance. And in that balance, transparency, scrutiny, public safety, property rights, all of that do have to come into account on this. And I have participated in a roundtable, matter of fact, just a few months ago, and I've been on and around the agricultural community for many, many years, working and dealing with them. And this expression of the abuse of property rights and trespass has been non-ending. It's always been there, and quite frankly, to pull upon the comments by Ms. Andrew Jones-Bitten, this is it's really festering to a point where it's having some serious impact on some of our communities. I'm deeply concerned right now because farmers, quite frankly, particularly during this time when we do need integrity of our food supply, the pressure that they're going through, they need allies, not enemies. And I can tell you that most farmers, literally almost without exception, are great stewards of the land. They care very, very deeply. The last people that they would want to impact is the Canadian public by putting forward a product that is not acceptable, not done in a humane manner, and within basically expectations of Canadians. So obviously, I think you know my stance on this, but I've just a couple of quick questions, and I'm hoping you can provide maybe some familiarity, just a quick almost yes or no. First, Ms. White, and then Ms. Lazare. How much time and experience do you have either living or working within the agricultural community itself on the land itself? Ms. White?
Yes, that's an interesting question because as an animal rights person, I often get asked that. In fact, on my mother's side, came from a farming community. My uncle was a dairy farmer. We spent a lot of time in the agricultural community, talking about working with the animals there. My aunt used to slaughter her own animals on the farm. So I'm pretty familiar with aspects of that, and I think that's where part of my expectations about treatment of animals came, and ultimately my work to try and protect animals in these circumstances.
Would you not also agree that literally almost every farmer welcomes people on their property to be able to see what they have, what they are, and they're proud of what they do, and certainly a very, very, very would be an exception to have someone that has not handled their responsibility well.
And I know I'm probably almost out of time. Ms. White, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to ask you a question, but I just want to thank you for your presentation and particularly the issues you brought up around a duty to report for veterinarians. And you may have a few seconds if you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
I just wanted to say, actually, that I think what this bill does is it divides everybody. And we have an opportunity to have this bill removed so that people on all sides.
Thank you
of this
very much.
issue-
That concludes your time, MPP Schreiner. We'll now turn to the government side for 8 minutes.
And I'm just curious, the relevance of this debate for veterinarians and their professional work that goes back many, many years. My great-grandfather was a veterinarian, and I guess I'm not up to date on their professional guidelines or code of conduct. For example, duty to report, whether there's a law or not. What about the professional body? So, Liz, could we ask you? I think you raised that. And then I'd like to go to Andrea, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I think we have if the bill passes, you have two competing directions to veterinarians about what they must do. Under the PAWS Act, they have a duty to report regardless. If they see some sort of inappropriate treatment of animals, they have a duty to report, and it lays out a whole specific line of things that they report, includes psychological deprivation. Then we come to Bill 156, where you're required, it seems to me from reading the act, to get permission from the owner-occupier if you decide that you saw something that needed to be reported. And so the question becomes, is there a conflict between the two pieces of legislation, and how would that be resolved should that be the case?